Welcome, fellow business brokers. This is part one of a two-part series that we're going to have where we're going to be talking to some of the top business brokers, top Main Street business brokers around the country. So really excited to introduce you to today 5 different business brokers from around the country representing different areas. Some of them are with franchises, some of them are with independent companies, and they all kind of approach the business brokerage field a little bit different from each other. But the one thing that they do have in common is that they are all top business brokers. So let's go ahead and introduce everybody. The first person I'd like to introduce is my good friend, Russell Cohen from Fort Lauderdale. Russell, in 2019, he sold 38 businesses for over $9 million. How you doing today, Russell?
Well, that sounds exhausting. I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. And next person I'd like to introduce to you guys is Greg. Greg comes from Denver, Colorado. He's with Rocky Mountain Business Advisors. And in 2019, Greg sold 6 businesses for over $4.2 million. How you doing today, Greg?
Very well. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I had a really nice conversation with you the other day.
Yeah.
And then we have Steve Hansen. He is coming from San Diego, California. He is with Transworld Business Advisors. And in 2019, Steven sold 17 transactions with a total sales price of over $17.5 million. Great job, Steven.
That's great. Awesome.
Pleasure to be here today.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. And also we have on the call is Dan Long. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's with Cincinnati Business Brokers. And in 2019, he sold 10 businesses with a total sales price of over $7 million. Great job, Dan.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you for putting this all together.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then we've got Trent Lee. He's come from Las Vegas, Nevada. Trent is with First Choice Business Brokers. And I do want to say that Trent has only been in the industry for 2 years, but he has sold in 2019, he sold 63 businesses with a total sales price of over $8.5 million. Welcome, Trent.
Thanks for having me.
So, hey, I appreciate all you guys joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you guys are all swamped, your top producers. Like we talked about on the phone prior to this presentation, it's really important that we're truthful and we're honest about what's going on out there. Hopefully this will inspire some business brokers out there to take their business brokerage to another level. But I do want us to be truthful and honest of what's going on out there with the COVID-19. Any tips and strategies or directions that we can give business brokers with those things would be great. I don't want business brokers walking away thinking, oh, everybody's doing all this work except for me, because we are facing some tough times with the COVID-19. I know some of the people on this call, you're doing really well. Some of the people on the panel, I should say, are doing really well during this, and the other ones, I know your numbers are going to be, down a little bit or down significantly this year. We are all from different areas of the country, so we're all getting affected by the COVID-19 differently. But, this is all about giving everybody that's in attendance the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on. So let's go ahead and open this up to questions. Russell, I'm going to start off with you. I know down in your area in Fort Lauderdale, you guys have had it the worst of any place in Florida. I think your 3 or 4 counties around you, you've had 35, 40,000 COVID-19 cases. How is that affecting you and your business brokerage, work right now and selling businesses?
We're sheltering in place from March 15th to just last week. So not much can really get done when everyone's afraid to go out and meet buyers and sellers. And it was just very tough during that time frame to generate new engagements. If I was able to get any particular seller to join as a client, it was from work that I had done previously, and they were ready to go and can do it electronically. It was extremely difficult to get offers. The pipelines felt like it was coming apart, and especially as a business broker, I felt like I lost my identity during those 60 days because I wasn't doing what I spent so many hours doing. So on a personal level, it affected everyone in South Florida, in business brokerage and every industry, except maybe the blue collar. I kept watching the pool people and the lawn maintenance people make money. So definitely South Florida was hit bad, but not as bad as other metropolitan areas.
And how do you think it's going to play out for you the rest of the year, Russell?
Well,
How much do you think you'll be down?
Just depending on what comes in, I think I'll probably be down 30 to 40% this year in total volume sales, maybe some bigger deals that are currently working. But I think what's most important is we lost 2 months of marketing. I think the listing base that I have, I already worked hard. I've already have deals pending, and that should help me for this year. But I think the losing of 2 months is the marketing time that I would have brought on other clients that are going to affect me 6, 12, 18 months down the line. So I'm really starting to, if I could pull out a decent year this year, I'm really concerned how next year is going to look too.
So you cut back on your marketing and advertising during those 2 months, correct? The last 2 months?
I did not really cut down on anything. I kept my publications, kept internet going. I was trying to improve my website. I didn't cut any advertising down at all. And I've made some strategic moves in advertising to boost, the bolster the advertising.
All right, great.
Forward. Yeah, I have not cut anything down.
Thank you, Russell. Let's move on. Let's move to Greg out in Colorado. How's things going with you right now with the COVID-19, and what do you expect the rest of the year?
I think, like other parts of the country, as things begin to open up, people's optimism begins to change, for the better. Obviously, the past 65, 70 days have been very quiet. Our state went into lockdown pretty early in this whole crisis. People really followed the orders, stayed inside, survival was really top of mind for everybody. Interestingly, of course, we see a lot of buyer activity, but the businesses that we're showing them, we want to show these businesses in their best possible light. And as agreed with my clients, the reason they have successful businesses is because they tend not to panic. And they're willing to wait to get the highest, most realistic price for their business. And it behooves me to stick with them take this journey with them, which is going to last a little longer than we would have liked.
Yeah, and it looks like your average sales around $750,000 a sale. So you think that those business owners are kind of making it through this a little bit better, you think, than the smaller businesses? Maybe they're more prepared and they have the cash reserves and the business acumen, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I was fortunate with some listings that I have this year that they are very solid businesses. There are a few of them are really hitting it out of the park right now, and a couple are just sliding by. A couple of them are dependent upon the hospitality industry. And we don't really see a reason to discount that business. They're not in a rush, and I'm not going to be in a rush.
Good for you. Stephen, out in San Diego, what's your thought on what's going on with the COVID-19?
So a lot of similar thoughts. We were an early lockdown state also. The Bay Area up in the northern part of the state was the first that was really locked down very early, but the rest of the state followed, fairly quickly. And like Greg said too, people, really abided by it. And I think it's really been, from the health point of view, been very, very good. As far as, the businesses, we're down. I mean, so we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're looking at where we're going to be, where we are now compared to last year. We're not there. However, I think we're doing things that, like the other gentlemen on the panel here, are to keep things going. So one, we did, for example, right at the beginning, we looked at our marketing and we did, sort of a little bit of a pivot and did some changes to our marketing, but we haven't changed our marketing dollars one bit. In fact, we've increased them to get out there. Listings that we do have that we're bringing on board that are new are, like Russell said, they're people that we were already talking to and we're working with, and then they decided to move forward. getting out there and trying to find those new listings. The ones that we are getting, and for the most part, are through referrals. People that were built through our network, whether attorneys, CPAs, people like that. So that's probably one of the things for listeners, those that, if you have a good referral network, stay in touch with your network, keep farming that network. If you don't have a network, make sure you start getting one, because that's where I think you're going to see a lot of new listings coming through referrals.
Great. Stephen, how much do you think you'll be down this year?
Well, I like to try to be optimistic, but I mean, I don't see that it'll be anything. If we're down 20%, we'll be happy, but it'll probably be more like 30%.
Okay.
And I think again, it's getting that pipeline going and moving forward. We got to keep working on that so that 2021 will be successful.
All right, great. And I'm going to come back and ask you guys different questions about how you're handling the COVID-19 and any strategic moves you guys have made or planning on making. Just want to kind of get everybody's feeling first on the panel about how it's affecting them first. Dan from Ohio,
Yes.
how is it affecting you up there in Cincinnati? I know you guys lost your quarterback on the Bengals, but how else is it affecting you?
We certainly have been affected. I feel somewhat that we've been in a little bit of a bubble here. I don't think we have been affected as much as my compadres here on this panel in Florida and California. But certainly, I know from I'm big on mailings, and I did a 15,000 piece mailing in February. I typically do one in February and one in October. And the one in February has resulted in very few calls. So, I mean, I can tell, because typically when I do the brochure mailing, I do get quite a few phone calls, and I can tell that the volume is down significantly. Hopefully those individuals will hold on to my brochure and call me maybe midsummer in the fall, maybe when things are turning around. But definitely feel the pain.
How much do you think you'll be down this year?
I've sold 3 businesses so far this year. I think I would be ecstatic if I would sell 6 or 7. So, probably down 25-30%, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Of course, it has an awful lot to do with not so much how many you sell, but the quality and the commission that you earn from the business that you sell.
Right. Okay, Dan, I appreciate it. Sounds like everybody's, falling in that, 20, 30, 40%. It was interesting earlier this week. I was speaking to Trent, and Trent is actually doing okay right now. Trent, you want to tell the attendees what's going on with you out in Las Vegas? And again, everybody's geographical area is different too, and different types of businesses people target. So go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, I hate to be the contrarian here, but it's been, I mean, no question about it. Las Vegas has been hit hard. The hotels are totally closed down. The tourist industry is really, really hit hard. But as far as busyness, I was just looking up while some of the other guys were looking. I've had a lot of new listings. I just counted, as I mentioned, while some of these guys were chatting, I did 6 new listings this week so far, from all new buyers that I've never, or new sellers that I've never talked to prior to this. And so primarily maybe everyone focuses on different industries or price ranges, but primarily I'm getting a lot of activity from motivated business owners. The business may or may not be in that bad of a situation, but I don't anticipate I will be down this year. I was just looking at my stats so far. I've closed 20 so far year to date. 21 will be tomorrow. I've got closing, and it's just over $5 million so far. So I anticipate, I've got 9 in escrow right now. I anticipate staying fairly busy, and I certainly count myself blessed and lucky for that. So things are doing okay.
That's great, Trent. Now, what do you think that success is from? You know, because the rest of us on the panel, not only myself included, and the people listening, you know, any advice or why do you think that you're having the success that you are having?
You know, I think it comes down to primarily how I market. And I'd be happy to talk a little bit about that. I don't want to take up too much time, and you know, I want to give everyone else you know, hear and learn from them. But I really don't do traditional business broker marketing. I've never done mailers before. I've never really called out to business owners or gone to networking events. So I really have it totally backwards, I guess, from the typical business broker, how they do things. I don't really follow that protocol of marketing. I've got a different system, different strategy, and we can certainly talk about that. And I think primarily that drives a lot of inbound calls and inbound referrals to me. And so that's primarily how I work.
Right.
I let people contact me, and I let people get on my calendar and initiate the contact themselves.
Right. And, you know, Trent, I appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, I feel like the other day when you and I were talking, you know, we had a really nice conversation, and, you know, maybe we can have you back on a webinar by yourself and we could talk a little bit about that. And you and I can talk about that later. I do want to stick to what we're doing, but I think we're going to have a lot of questions from our attendees today for you as well, Trent.
Sure.
Has anybody on the panel, have they changed the way that they're marketing and advertising, or changing the industry types that they're going after?
Yeah, Jim, I could help you with that. Obviously, with South Florida being hit pretty hard, the essential businesses are the key. And I think that's been floating around in the IBBA with all the virtual conference. So the essential businesses are the ones that are working construction, blue collar companies. Those are the companies that are going to be the great companies to bring on the market in this COVID time. And what I did is on my website, I made it very clear on the front page of my website, explaining that I've been through 2 recessions and I'm battle tested. And so when sellers go on my website, they, you know, outside of all the testimonials or whatever I have on my website, I want them to know that I've been through recessions, not like this. No one's been through this, but I made a lot of tweaks to my website. So when I do get people there, it will stand out.
So you're targeting more essential type businesses?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know, Russell, I know for many years you were targeting, you know, the smaller end of the deals, and you were doing huge quantities of those deals. And I know in the last couple of years you're pivoting towards keeping those, but going to bigger deals as well. Are you still focusing, trying to get the bigger deals, or you just taking whatever you can get that's good quality business?
It's a massive transition. It's a lot of education to understand how to do the bigger deals, which I've been involved in the M&A Source and going to their conferences. So the pivot is there, and it's going to pay dividends over the next 10, 15 years. And it has already started to pay dividends because I'm taking larger engagements. And I did notice, you know, back in the other recession, back in, you know, the last recession, there were some bigger deals done. So, you know, there is an opportunity to do bigger deals in this environment too. You just have to have the inventory, and that's the challenging part in that space, is to get the inventory.
Okay, great. Stephen, are you taking a different approach to business brokerage with the COVID-19?
Not in particular. So our office, you know, we're pretty well focused on, I guess, you know, that new word, essential businesses, but we've concentrated a lot in the trucking, long haul freight to manufacturing, distribution type companies. So those are all kind of in that essential group. All of those businesses are doing really well right now. I mean, I've got really good contacts, very good interest in them. You know, 3 of them have very strong LOIs on them. If those all close, we'll probably be looking at almost close to last year if those all go through.
Excellent.
So then all of a sudden that 20 to 30% down, we're right back to where we thought we would be. However, we are looking to diversify and make sure we do stay with Main Street, and getting some of the smaller deals. There are I think there'll be a lot of good smaller deals out there, and we want to participate in that. So yes, we will continue to focus on those higher price, higher valued businesses that are more complex to sell. But there's going to be lots of opportunities, and I believe a lot of buyers for smaller businesses to Main Street businesses, for a company that not necessarily has failed, okay, as a failed, but still successful, where the owner finally has said, I've been through this in 08, 09.
Yeah.
I'm in my mid-60s or whatever, time to sell. And it's a good opportunity for somebody. A good time to negotiate rents, and probably get themselves a pretty good deal on it too. So I don't think we're going to make any major changes in our focus. I think we'll probably stay with a mixed bag, from high end to some good, strong Main Street businesses.
Stephen, thank you. And I tell you, you touched on the business owners that have been through the 2008, 2009 Great Recession, and I've been talking for a couple of years about that we are experiencing, or we're going to experience, the greatest transfer of personal financial wealth the world has ever seen. And part of that is going to be business owners. The baby boomer generation is going to be retiring. That's why we're going to see that, and we're going to see a large amount of baby boomers looking to sell their businesses that they've owned for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And in the last couple of years, I've personally seen an increase of business owners like that are 60, 70 years old, looking to sell their businesses, but not as many as I thought I would. And I'm just looking back and I'm thinking, I think these business owners, they've been through a lot. They were through the 2001 crash, the Great Recession, and now they're going through this COVID-19 situation. Whether they do it now or they do it, when we get past the COVID-19, I think some of these business owners that are been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years will be like, I've had enough. I'm ready just to sell. And I think we're going to see a lot of businesses come on the market from the baby boomer generation, which will be good for all of us. And I still, me personally, I don't think there's enough business brokers out there to be able to handle the amount of work that we're going to be looking towards. So anyways, I appreciate that. Anybody else? Trent, Dan, Greg, are you guys changing the way you're approaching the industry because of the COVID-19?
No, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead, Trent.
Okay, so I'm pretty general. I don't specialize in anything, so I take anything high to low, and I haven't been doing it long enough to feel like I can get so picky that I only can work with certain level or certain size of deals. So I'm happy to work with just any business that is interested in selling, as long as they're motivated and they're willing to stick within my general valuation range. They're realistic in those terms. By way of marketing, as I mentioned, I don't necessarily do a lot of outbound or any outbound marketing, but I do, and I have changed and increased the content that I produce and put out there. That's a big part of how I market, is educating buyers and sellers through various different means. And so I have had the opportunity to increase educational content that is building goodwill and furthering relationships with people that are on my buyer seller list, and it's all done automated, so I don't have to necessarily spend the time. And so I'll get a lot of calls from people that have gone through that education, that content, and a lot of referrals from people that this information has been passed to, or their CPA, their attorney, has gone through it, and we'll send it over. And so I'm happy to work with any size of deal in any industry at this point.
Great. Thank you, Trent. And I can tell you, Trent, we're getting a lot of people in the chats and on the Q&A asking you questions, and we're going to come back to that. But I think we're also going to, if you're up to it, have you on at a webinar at one point, just you, and we can talk about the way you're marketing, because everybody's asking. Dan, what's your opinion? Have you changed any way that you're handling?
No, not really. I'm a little bit different in as much as I'm a sole practitioner. So it's myself. I'm the only broker here. So I tend to be very selective. I mean, I've got a minimum commission of $25,000. So, I've been doing this for almost 15 years. So the older I get, I'm 67 years old. So the older I get, the more selective I tend to be. So I really haven't changed my approach or the industries that I'm looking at. So that's about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dan. And I was looking at your numbers, and I'm pretty similar to you. You sold 10 businesses last year for 7 million. I sold 6 businesses for 6.6 million. So yeah, I don't sell very many businesses in a given year, but they tend to be a little bit higher dollar amount for a Main Street business broker. And like you, I'm very selective on the businesses that I take on. I'm selling probably 80% or more of the businesses that I list, which is
Right.
very good for the national norm of 20% or less.
Sure.
I think you and I work a lot alike, and good thing is we're probably, neither one of us are probably working 65 hours a week.
Amen. Amen.
But I got to tell you, like, I'm a generalist too, and I think there's something that can be said about being a specialist. I think being a specialist in this industry is, I think that's the way of the future. But I'm a generalist business broker, and I got to tell you, my numbers are going to be down this year, but I feel lucky where I'm at, that I have, just going into the COVID-19, I had some listings that were essential businesses. I had a manufacturing business, I had a construction business, a lawn business, a pool business, and those, I'm getting good activity on those, and I'm expecting an LOI on a couple of those in the next week or so. And then I have other businesses that are not doing very well, and they tend to be the retail, restaurant, that type of a thing. So me personally, I'm going to be going more off the essential businesses moving forward during the COVID-19. So that's just my little input. I want to ask you guys another question, and I want to turn it over to the attendees in a minute and let them ask you guys questions directly. Would you guys take on any listings right now of businesses that are closed due to the COVID-19 or that are performing pretty badly during the COVID-19, or are you guys all focusing on the essential businesses right now? Trent, I saw you shaking your head.
Yeah, hey, look, I'll take them. I don't, unless their valuation and their idea of what they want to sell a business for is not in line with reality and what I think, I really don't turn things down. And so, as I mentioned before, a couple of the new listings I took this week are businesses that are basically shut down. There's a really great catering business, the biggest one in the city of Las Vegas that I met with. We're going through the process now. They do $5 million in revenue, lots of reoccurring contracts, really clean, good financials, very profitable. For the most part, they're closed down. A lot of their, they would provide lunch, breakfast, and dinner for a lot of these, ancillary services for hotels, not directly in the hotels, but some of the, call centers for reservations and, rental car companies. And a lot of that is closed down. And so we've had to get creative on how that valuation is going to look and how that deal is going to look. But he's a motivated seller. He's got a really good business that right now it's not great, but it's going to come back eventually. Very profitable, lots of reoccurring revenue. And I'm primarily focusing on putting together deal structures that will work in this environment, which largely is a significant portion of seller financing, and making sure they're realistic on the market multiples. So as we went through and talked with him, he's got good, clean, $500,000 profit on the tax returns, and he's not looking for much more than 1.2, 1.3 times earnings, and he's willing to seller finance 50% of that. Wow. Type of a business. I don't care what the market is. We're going to find a buyer for it. We'll find a buyer fairly quickly for it, because someone's not necessarily buying the business for what it does next week. It's been around for 15 years, and they're going to buy it and have the long-term perspective. And so I am getting realistic with sellers on valuations and deal structuring that includes seller financing to make sure that we can move these listings that we take.
Are you doing earnouts too, Trent, or is it straight owner financing?
Yeah, on another one that we talked about this week, it largely is going to be based on an earnout. So we are certainly talking about that. Depends on the situation, but yeah, that is on the table, and often it is a talking point on a lot of deals right now, just
Yeah.
because of how, Vegas, the situation where a lot of these businesses, were once great businesses and are either totally closed down or significantly impacted, and then earnout is a real talking point.
So Trent, it's for you, it's talking to the sellers and trying to get them to understand realistically your price on the business is going to be less than it normally would because of the situation. And, we're going to have to be creative with the terms, whether you're doing owner financing or an earnout or something like that. Now, you were talking about you're pretty strict on your pricing when you put a price on there. If you take a listing, they have to fall within those parameters. And the catering business, it sounds like they're, between the pricing and the owner's note, it looks really, really good. And one thing I like about that also is that I would imagine that they don't have a lot of fixed overhead, like a 10,000 square foot restaurant or a 5,000 square foot restaurant. I mean, it's a catering business. If it was a restaurant with, let's say $14,000 a month in rent, how would that play into your valuation or whether you're going to take the business or not?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, and certainly there's lots of other guys here that could, with way more experience than me that can chime in and hear from them. But that is a big challenge. There's a couple restaurants that I have met with that, if they have the carry out and the dine out, are ironically doing better than ever. In fact, I'm waiting on SBA approval, hopefully in the next week or so, on a 4-restaurant location, Italian kind of pizza bistro, pasta place, and they're more profitable than they ever have been.
Wow.
Because they have no staff besides people in the kitchen, and they're carrying out. And at least for the most part, Vegas, a lot of people are still dining out. That situation is not necessarily applicable here to your question. There's other restaurants where they don't have the capability for carry out, and that really presents a challenge because not only are they closed, but they've got this tremendous amount of overhead, and honestly, there are some business given the situation that really just may not make it. They may just have to close, no matter how likely and how aggressive we get on the price. If their lease payments $15,000 a month and they're closed, and it's going to be a long haul for them to come back, it's tough to find the buyer for that situation.
I appreciate that, Trent. I appreciate that. I don't want to hog up. I have a few more questions, but I want to start opening up the lines to the attendees and allow the people that are listening to ask questions directly. Please just raise your virtual hand, and when you raise your virtual hand, I'll just start taking questions. I'll bring you in, and you can ask the question directly to our panelists. So go ahead and just start raising your virtual hand. And while people are doing that, any of the panelists, anybody else change, or would they not take a business that is closed down or performing badly during the COVID-19? What's your look on that?
I would just make sure, I certainly would take a business. I've got listings right now that are not doing well, but I would certainly make sure that I had at least a 1-year listing agreement with that business. So at least there was ample time for the business to recover from the COVID situation that we're in. And, obviously banks are going to want to look at, and I'm in the middle of a deal right now where it does not look like it's going to go through, but you compare April 30th of this year to April 30th of last year, business is way down. But once they get back open in June, we're hoping that third quarter will show that they're back moving forward and that business is good. And you're going to have to make sure that you have a good relationship with the buyer and the seller, and make sure that they're comfortable with being patient and waiting to ensure them that the business is going to come back. Common sense tells you that it's going to come back.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
I think, for us in San Diego here, there are definitely businesses that we're looking at and being contacted by sellers that are closed. They're not even waiting to come back, and they're looking for their options. What can I do? And if they're realistic and they'll, like Trent had said, they'll work with a reasonable multiple. If they have some good books and records that we can show a buyer that, hey, this is what we were doing in this location. Let's say it was a restaurant, for example, or a retail location, and it's a location that's prime. It's a desirable location that should come back. That area should come back, and we've got an opportunity to even probably negotiate even a better rent, because rents, that has been a problem out here in Southern California with landlords. Now they're starting to bend, and they want a tenant versus no tenants. We are looking at those restaurants or other businesses. So, for example, we took on 2 recently. One was a small restaurant, not in a really very good location. Okay, within days, we got people interested in it, and someone looks like they're going to come in with an offer. They want it for a virtual kitchen. They just want the location. They want the hood, the grease trap, and the stuff that's in there. They're not going to use it for anything that it was used for before.
They're selling it. It's an asset sale.
It's an asset sale.
Yeah.
And another one was a jewelry store. I said, well, we'll never sell this thing. Within one day, somebody with another jewelry store in another part of actually California said, we've always wanted to open up a jewelry store in that area of San Diego, and they're looking at it very, strongly right now. So I think their deals are out there. They're not what we normally had done, but I think we're going to play in that game. Yeah,
great.
We're going to pivot and move there.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So we've got Steve on the line. Steve, can you tell us, and I'm going to start opening the lines up, and when you get on the line, if you can tell us where you're calling from, what city and state, and keep your question, if you don't mind, to 30 seconds or under. Steve, can you hear us? Steve Santons? Okay. I don't know what happened to Steve, but let's try to bring Doug Robbins in. Doug, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Hi, Doug. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. For your information, I'm in Toronto, Canada, so we're just across the border from you all. And we're suffering the same way you all are, pretty much universally. We're in a little different market than you people are. We're just one notch above business brokerage. We're in the lower end of the mid-sized market. Our transaction sizes are around $2.5 to $10 million. That's our sweet spot in terms of selling price. We have a minimum commission, it's a little bit higher, but I've got a team of people that's working with me. I have a question for Trent. Trent, we've started a fairly aggressive marketing program under the guise of education. And if you were going on our website, you'd see some of the education material that we're using, and we're just developing a whole bunch more. But my question to you is, what media are you using for your education, and how do you get people to that media?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, I'm still experimenting. I'm still learning. I'm still testing. I'll give you just a general overview of what I'm trying to do. I deliberately engineer a massive amount of goodwill to my target audience, whether it's buyer or seller, and that's the outcome is really quite simple. The goal of the outcome, I guess I should say, by the time they call me, they already know me, they already like me, and they already trust me. And I've never even talked with them before. So I don't really deal with people that call up and are interviewing me, and they're interviewing someone else, and they ask about my fees, and they ask about my background. They call me up and they already know, like, and trust me, and they're ready to list with me. And primarily I do that through video, published articles, ebooks, physical books. I do it through, again, I'm testing a lot of different things. I'm trying to see what works. I'll do a lot of social media retargeting so that they are, you can retarget someone for very cheap. And so they get the feeling that everywhere they go, they see me and they see videos and they see articles. And so that builds that goodwill with that audience. So that's a general overview.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And Doug Robbins, you spoke at the Business Brokers of Florida conference a couple years ago, right? 2018.
Yes,
you did an excellent job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Anytime you want to hear me sing and dance, just give me a call.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks for joining us, Doug. Richard, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
All right, excellent. Where are you calling from, Richard? I mean, I know where you're calling from, but tell everybody else where you're calling from.
Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Thanks for joining us, Richard. What's your question?
My question is for Russell, and I was just wondering what he finds the most effective listing marketing strategies.
Well, the internet's always been, outside of referrals, has always been the best for me. Longevity on the internet will get you great placement, and it'll get you off the roller coaster. And you and I have spoken in the past. I've referred you my web guy to help you in the past, and I know you got some nice presence on the internet also. But the internet for Main Street has definitely helped.
All right, thank you.
Again.
All right, Phil, are you with us?
Yes, I sure am. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Where are you calling from?
From Los Angeles, California with Link Business. And first of all, I'd like to thank all the panelists. Great discussion. Just a quick question. Trent, I'm wondering, do you have a minimum commission on your transactions?
I do, yes.
Can you share what that would be, or is that?
15,000.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hey, Phil, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You know, I know Los Angeles, you know, outside of New York has been one of the hardest hit areas. How's it going for you guys out there with business brokerage?
We're focused in sync with the panel here. We're seeing the activity is still there on essential businesses. That's my area of focus. And I think the non-essential businesses are pretty much stagnant. We've seen a lot of deals that have either been put aside that couldn't get the SBA financing through, or the buyer and seller withdrew because of the uncertainty because of COVID-19. But last 2 weeks, more activity and listings are picking up. A lot of buyer interest. People
Really? Out
yeah,
in Los Angeles?
correct.
Well, if there's activity going on in Los Angeles, that gives us all hope, Phil.
On the again, on the essential businesses, I think the non-essential business, that divide that you've been talking towards, is very much apparent here.
All right, excellent. Hey, thank you for joining us, Phil.
Sure. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has any other questions for our panelists? I know our Q&A has been lighting up, but I'd much rather have everybody join us live if you have a question than for us to start reading questions. I think we've got Paul with us again. Let me try to. Paul?
Hello.
Hi, where are you calling from, Paul?
Hi, guys. It's Paul Cheatham from Vancouver, Canada.
Great.
My question is to anyone on the panel. What would you say is the most important book or educational course that you've taken that has contributed to your success?
I can answer that if nobody else wants to answer that. I know I'm not a panelist, but you know, I got to tell you, I can't pinpoint one particular book, one particular audio, CD, course that I can say you need to do this. I've been doing business brokerage for about 20 years. I was a single full-time dad for many of those years, so I was very limited on what I could do. Back in 2015, I started taking more educational classes. I took a lot. I got my CBI through the IBBA, got my designations, 2 designations from the M&A source. I just started exposing myself to a lot of different books and classes and, you know, designations and different organizations. And I can tell you that there's a direct correlation between how much knowledge you gain out there, at least for me, I should at least talk for me, direct correlation by how much knowledge you gain out there than to what classes you're taking. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, an industry that you can make 100,000, 300,000, 500,000. I even know some brokers out there that they've got to be pushing $1 million a year. And, you know, so you're talking about an industry where you can make a good amount of money, but it's strange that business intermediaries don't want to put the money into the education. You know, I was spending in 2000, before this year, I was spending probably $8,000, $10,000 a year in education. And, you know, people go and they spend $4,000 or $5,000 a year to become a hairdresser, and yet business brokers are not willing to spend $4,000 or $5,000 a year in an industry where you can make well into the six figures. So, I think taking classes with the IBBA, the M&A Source, attending these webinars, getting mentored by, top business brokers out there or people in your company. That's my 2 cents. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add on to that also. I'm right with you, Jim. 21 years doing this. I took 2015, I decided to get back involved with the IBBA and get my CBI. So it took me a long time to get my CBI. I not by accident, I just chose not to, get involved in the education. And ever since I did, I felt like definitely improvement as a more professional business broker. And then obviously joining the M&A Source and learning how the structure of the big deals and learning how get that education and get more confidence so you can prepare for the future. So it's never just one course. It's a body of work, and it takes years, and you have to keep going at it. You always see the same people at all these conferences. Those are the people dedicated to the industry, to those associations.
That's so true.
I could
Jim,
echo.
I'll comment on that.
Yeah, please do so, Trent.
So this one's an interesting question. I really like it. I'm a huge fan of reading and knowledge and better educating yourself and better establishing credibility for yourself. So I looked through my Audible account, and there's got to be 150 different business books. I don't read fiction. I don't read, sci-fi, anything like that, just strictly business books. I love learning about systems, processes, automations, internet marketing, technology, that type of stuff. And so to your point, Jim, overall, there's, it's not just one book. It's a collective total of constantly educating yourself. And so I was, I don't listen to music ever. I drive around and I'm constantly listening to video trainings, audio trainings, podcast trainings. I'm a little bit probably more extreme than most people. I've got, married almost 19 years. We've got 4 kids. Up until just a couple of years ago, we didn't even have a TV in our house at all, not a single one. We spend a lot of time on education and content, not just me personally, but our family, the kids. And so there was I was at a conference a while ago, and I had to laugh to myself. I didn't say this out loud, but I had to laugh to myself because one of the business brokers was asking me about this. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do you have time for this? And then he turned right around to the next guy behind him and asked, "What episode of Game of Thrones are you on?" And I just kind of laughed to myself, and I thought, no wonder you aren't as productive as you want. You're on like episode whatever, 20. I don't even know. I've never seen Game of Thrones or know what it's even about. But they talked about how many hours of TV were these guys watching and wasting when they could have been learning and educating themselves and bettering their practice. If you're a CPA that's been in business for 30 years and you're only 2 or 3 times better than the first year you were in business, well, something's wrong. You're not educating yourself and growing as much as you should.
Good.
I think I can echo a lot of those too. Is the education? I don't think it's any one course, but and often it's repeating a course that you've taken before. So, for example, I'm on the Board of Education, a part of the California Association of Business Brokers, and we're reviewing all of our classes and moving them to virtual because they've always been in a classroom setting. And going back through the slide decks and looking at the stuff and going, oh, there's a little piece, there's a little nugget, that I learned 6 years ago or whatever, and getting that refresher is very, very important. In the franchise that I'm in, education is very important. The franchise, they offer lots of classes, lots of different webinars to keep us fresh on different topics. But I think the brokers that do well have gone out and made sure they get their credentials, whatever state they're in, IBBA credentials and other ones too, and to continue to take courses, coaching type courses too, other business type books. For example, I've been reading a lot of marketing books recently too, and they all come together and they make you a stronger broker, someone that you'll only enhance your practice. You've got to invest that, Jim, as you said, that time, and also you got to invest that money into making yourself stronger and better.
And it'll come back tenfold.
Tenfold. Yeah.
And Steve used the word nugget. I mean, I was on a seminar this morning, and there are always nuggets, notes that you take, and whether it's changing a form or bringing a form more up to date, or somebody had an idea about a buyer profile and I'm going to amend my profile to include something. I mean, there's always some little nugget. It's not necessarily you're going to completely change your whole operation from listening to a seminar, but there are definitely little nuggets that if brokers would get on these seminars on a regular basis, there are always going to be some takeaways that you can make your operation better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of these classes too, and these webinars for a seasoned broker who's been doing it a while, you're learning, you might only pick up one or two things, but those one or two things could be very, very crucial. Somebody brand new to the industry, their head might be spinning a little bit, because there's so much information flying around at them. The one thing is you're never going to learn everything there is to know about business brokerage. If there's a business broker out there that thinks they know everything about it, please give me a call, because I think you're going to keep learning. I mean, you're just constantly learning, just doing deals even, you're learning. And I think that's a crucial thing. And early in my career, and it's something I should start doing again, but I would leave a closing, and I'm from Florida, so we're a co-broke state. That means we co-broke with other brokers. I would leave a closing, and I'd be happy about getting my commission check, but what I would do is I would think about, what are all the things I did right? What are all the things I did wrong? What could have I done better? What did the other broker do right? What did the other broker do wrong? And I'd start doing that self-reflection on that, on the closing, on the way back to the office. And I thought that was very vital. So I think that, self-reflection is important too. We have another caller on the line. I don't have a name. I apologize. Your phone number should be on the screen. Okay, I'm going to bring in Brandon then. Brandon Owens. Brandon, you're going to have, there you go. Where are you calling from, Brandon?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, great. So you're in Dan's neck of the woods, huh?
Yeah.
The question is, are there any surprises in the past year and or the past few months relative to trends? For example, are there like business categories emerging that are up and coming that hadn't been in the past? I'd like to start with Dan Long since he's in the same area, and then anybody else that cares to tackle that one.
Brandon, I'm sorry, I have not really seen any new trends in my little neck of the woods here.
All right.
I'll comment. I would definitely say in Florida, or South Florida at least, retail is a tough animal tough business to own. Rents are very high, and you're competing against Amazon. But internet companies, they've always been great for the past 10, 15 years. So internet, if you can land a good internet company, your buyer could be anywhere in the country, and retail is a tough sell, and it's been a tough sell for a long time.
Great. Got Ron Langman. Ron, you're going to have to unmute yourself in the left-hand corner. Okay. I'm going to bring in Charlie in the meantime. Charlie Meeks, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thanks.
All right, excellent. Where are you calling from, Charlie?
I'm calling from Tampa, Florida with Murphy Business.
Okay, welcome.
So, and I've been with them for a whole 5 months. And that seems like an eternity, but I mean, from the standpoint of so much to learn and in so little time. And with this COVID-19, have not been through the formal training or a lot of other things that have been going on. So most of my knowledge has come from the books, Audible, Trent, has been a great resource for me. One of the things that I constantly battle with in talking with clients, and I've got about 12 businesses in my pipeline that I'm currently working on, getting past the retainer. How do you talk to your clients about the retainer so that it's not such a block in the process?
Before we answer that question, I just want to say that it's a couple minutes to 3. And the IBBA, I know, is holding a 3 o'clock webinar. If you have to jump off the webinar, off this one, please do so. Go to the IBBA, listen to that. We are recording this. This is going to be on YouTube, and we're going to send out the link to this, so don't worry about it. And if any of the panelists need to go, I feel free. I understand you guys have given us enough time. But anybody want to answer Charlie's question?
I mean, we've never charged a retainer, and I think that sellers know that from being on our website and looking at our brochure. And I think that that's one reason why I get the call, is because we do not have a retainer.
Okay, good answer. That's kind of how I felt. You earn your money in the commission structure. So
I would say here in California, it's you earn your money on the commission at the end of the deal, and we're a real estate licensed state, and the retainers don't come into practice.
But just to clarify, are we talking about a retainer or an engagement fee that's credited back at closing, Charlie?
I took Charlie off. Let me bring Charlie back. Sorry, Charlie, can you hear us? You're going to have to unmute again.
there we go.
Yeah,
yeah, Greg, it's it is a add back or subtraction of the commission. Typically.
Yeah, I mean, I charge an engagement fee because I want that seller to be serious about what they're doing, and more importantly, serious about what I'm doing. And it's very easy if someone doesn't pay anything to not take things seriously. And when they fork over some money that they should, and they can't have an expectation that I'm going to devote ample time to their business. And so for me, and early in my career, I would let it slide. And, I'll tell you, at least to me, there's a bond that's created when you take someone's money that you owe them something. And what I owe them is my best effort. And if they're not willing to ante that up, and I think that most smart business people get that. And if they don't, I'm not sure that I really want to spend the time working on their behalf.
I think I was getting conflicted information for the last 5 months. I just got a text from my regional director stating that we do not take retainers on the buyer side. I'm sorry, on the seller side. So scratch that.
Charge for a broker opinion of value at the Murphy brand or valuation.
Right.
That's common. That
would be very common.
But from a Main Street side, we don't take a retainer.
Greg, what kind of price range do you charge for the retainer?
Oh, anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000.
I'm sorry, how much?
For an engagement fee as opposed to a retainer, right? From an engagement fee, anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000.
Okay. All right. Great. We have a question from Frank Filer. If you were to start brand new today, what would be the most important task that you would want to master before you jumpstart your career?
I'll answer that question. I probably would have joined the IBBA back in 2000, 20 years ago, and gotten my education and then worked my way into the larger deal space a lot quicker. That's taken me 15 to 20 years to be at where I'm at right now. But I would have jumped into education first, get all the education in line, and then launch from there.
I would agree with Russell, but in addition to that, I think you need to have a very good CRM, customer relations management tool, just to keep track of your buyers, keep track of your sellers, keep track of your emails. I mean, if you have a a decent sized practice, there's no way you could operate successfully without a good CRM in place.
Great. Anybody else?
Being part of a franchise system, Dan, I totally agree with you. We have a CRM system, part of Transworld, that I don't know how you could do it without it if you're independent. So you've got to find that other vendor that brings that product to you. So for me, I came out of corporate America. I've been there for a long, long time, and I had a lot of finance training and skills along the way. And I had done a lot of mergers and acquisitions too. But if I was going to go back and do it again, I would have joined IBBA earlier too. I would have made sure I got my CBI right away, and other educational programs, kept moving on. I would have done that sooner and not waited as long as I happened to have before I did it.
I got to say, I agree with Stephen. Me personally, again, I'm not a panelist, I'm the host, but I want to throw my 2 cents in there. I got to say, I totally agree with Russell and Stephen. I would have taken classes with the IBBA and the M&A source many years before I actually did. Because of the situation that I was in personally, I just couldn't do it. But that would be the thing that I would tell a brand new broker, is to do that. However, I do want to say this. I did have a really good start to my career when I first got into the industry. And I did really, really well right off the bat. And I worked for a company that was a residential real estate company. So it wasn't a business brokerage company. There was nobody at the company that knew anything about business brokerage. So I was in a situation where I didn't have anybody really mentoring me, and I didn't have any educational background in business brokerage. Now, I was a successful business owner before that, so I drew from that. And I think I was successful because I did not know what I did not know. And as an instructor for both the IBBA and the BBF, I look at some of the business brokers that come to the industry and they leave the industry very quickly. I think that they focus so much on what they don't know, and it overwhelms them that they're afraid to even get out there and start their career. And, I looked at it back then just very simply. I had, buyers and I had sellers, and I'm playing the game of solitaire, and I'm matching cards up, and I'm lifting up those cards. When I have a match, I put them to the side, and I look for another match, and I put those to the side. And I guess what I'm saying is the classes and the education in this industry is critical, but don't wait to take all the education in classes. You just got to jump in, and you just got to start doing it. You got to be honest. You got to be ethical. You got to work as hard as you can, put the time into it, and the education will come. I mean, you're going to learn as you go. I hope that makes sense, but that's kind of my view on it. I don't want the listeners listening that are brand new business brokers feeling that they have to take a year's worth of education before they begin. I do think you need to have a really good mentor that you can count on to ask questions, though, which I did not have.
Hey, Jim, if I can add to that, one of the wonderful things about this business is there's something new every day, something new to learn. There's a new challenge. And you have an opportunity to learn every time you sit down with a seller. You're learning about more about the business owner mindset. You're learning more about their business, which you're just going to continue to build upon. Speaking with buyers, the same thing, what motivates them. But to also, you've got to rely on your partners, right? I mean, I didn't have a finance background. So when I have a question, I reach out to some of the CPAs that I know, above and beyond the other business brokers that I know. So if you're willing to get off your ass and ask some questions of people, you're going to find that they're willing to share their expertise, and you continue to build on it. I mean, I feel every month that I'm a better, more accomplished, more educated broker than I was in the prior month. And for me, that makes it exciting.
I agree. I've been doing this and you can't be afraid of who you're learning from. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And I look at Trent, who's been doing it for 2 years, and I feel like I can learn a great deal from him. So you always got to look, where can I learn information from? We got some more virtual hands up, but I wanted to, while we're on this topic of new business brokers, somebody asked a question about 45 minutes ago. They've been in the business brokerage for a few years. COVID-19 or not, businesses are always easy to list, hard to get them sold. From my observation, the closing rate is 1 in 10. is a good observation. It's about 1 in 10 or 1. Yeah, it's pretty close. It is very frustrating for both the business broker and the seller. There's only a handful of inquiries. It takes 6 to 12 months. You know, I guess he's asking or she's asking what can be done. Panelists, anybody on the panelists want to address that?
I'll jump in. The average business takes 9 months to sell. So what you've listed 6 to 12 months before is your future business. And if you are dealing in volume amount of listings, you're not going to sell everything. You're going to have to go out and get price reductions. You're going to have to update your listings. You're going to have to talk to the sellers to get in line and prepare to sell. But not everything sells in 12 months. Sometimes it takes longer. So it's not a consistent business. As much as we all like to make it a consistent business, it is, you'll never figure it out. I haven't figured it out yet. So you just got to stay the course. You got to continuing marketing yourself, taking on new engagements, building a pipeline, and deals will come through.
Anybody else? Thank you, Russell. I appreciate that. That's some good advice. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd have something to add. I think when you're listing a business and you're bringing it to market, you really need to take a critical look of how you're presenting that business. I'm rather underwhelmed by some of the things that I see in the CIMs that are presented by people. They don't show an attention to detail. They don't show an understanding of the value proposition. And someone's not doing their job there. And I think it makes a lot of sense to take a real deep dive and sit back and review what it is that you're going to present and say, does this excite me? Is this a business that I would want to buy? Do I have more questions? Do I have too many questions than I have answers? And I just think that, I see a lot of lazy presentations out there, for lack of a better word. So much it comes down to what you're putting out there and the time you put into it.
Greg, I think that's a great point too. We work hard to get a listing, and then often a lot of brokers and we're all could be guilty of it, but then we don't put the time into it and that extra effort to prepare that business for sale. And I know a number of my colleagues, they'll spend 2, 3 to 4 weeks or so, preparing the listing before it goes live. And so, getting out there, getting a good CIM, depending on the size of the business, but getting the detail in there so that you have a really good package to give to a potential buyer. That's a big part of the game too. So if you don't take that time and you present the business poorly, you're probably going to get bad results.
Right. And a quick way to validate that is to, talk to your first couple of buyer inquirers and use their feedback to tell you where your blind spots are. What questions are they asking that you didn't address up front that you can then go back and fix? You just don't have to put it out there one time and say, well, that's the best I can do, and let me move on to the next one. It's a contact sport, this game, right?
I get it. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here again. Reading that question, was that listings are easy to get. It's hard to get closings. And I find it extremely hard myself to get listings because you're talking to a lot of business owners that are unreasonable about their price. They're unreasonable about the terms or expectations, what they're going to get from it. It's not a good business. It's just not a good business for whatever reason it is. And, you do a broker's opinion of value on the business and the seller's like, wow, I thought my business was worth a lot more than it was. So I find it really difficult to get the listing. And maybe that's part of the problem that whoever that individual is that is asking that question is that you're too eager to tell the seller what they want to hear in order to get the listing. And you should talk to them more heart to heart and be honest with them. And not saying you're being dishonest, but having more of a heart to heart with them and laying out the expectations of what they can expect and bringing them into reality in the early stages. One of the things that, business brokers, seasoned business brokers tend to tell people is that you need to control your seller. You need to control your buyer. And that always bothered me. But as I got more seasoned as a business broker, I realized what they really meant was that we need to educate our sellers and we need to educate our buyers. And I think the more you educate your seller up front and say, this is the realistic price you're going to get, to get it sold, we're going to have to do these terms. You're going to have to talk to me about the skeletons in the closet. I can't be caught off guard, once we go into due diligence. I need to know that information up front. It's kind of like playing chess. You need to know, and you need to be making moves, many, many moves ahead. And, again, I guess it goes back to, it's the old debate in our industry. Should we work in quantity or should we work in quality? And I see some very successful business brokers that work in quantity that make really good money, and they're really good business brokers, and they're really good people. And then I see other brokers that are really good people, really good business brokers, and they work in quality. And there's nothing wrong, I think, in working with on either end, as long as you're honest with your sellers up front. But I think that whoever asked that question, maybe you need to re-examine if you're finding it really easy to get a listing, you're probably not having the hard conversations that you need to have with your seller. So, anybody else have any input on any of that? Okay. We got a question coming in from Tom. Tom, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello, gentlemen.
Where are you calling from, Tom?
Tom Hart, I'm calling from Raleigh, North Carolina. Beautiful Raleigh.
Nice.
Great place to live.
It is. That's a beautiful area.
Yeah,
what's your question, Tom?
Well, the question is, at what point in the process do any of you ask your buyers for earnest money? Do you get involved in earnest money at any point in the due diligence process, before, after? Just curious about any perspective on earnest money.
Well, I'll jump in there. Once an offer is made, there's earnest money put down that day, as soon as it's signed, right up front.
It's my understanding that's the consideration of the offer. I can't imagine an offer being valid if they don't put earnest money down within 2 or 3 days.
And once they sign that contract or LOI, they got a couple of days to get the money in.
Yeah.
And due diligence shouldn't start until they have that deposit money in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all
Not
that.
start till the deposit money's in. Yeah.
You guys, do you have a minimum amount that you ask for earnest money, or is it a percentage of the sale price, or how do you determine it?
10% of the purchase price on a larger
Same
deal.
here.
$50,000.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, at least 10%.
I mean,
I want the earnest money to at least cover my minimum.
wow.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Okay, Armand, can you hear us? I think you have to unmute yourself in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, let's try Russ. Can you unmute yourself in the bottom left-hand corner? Okay, we're going to try Alex here.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi, Alex. Where are you calling from?
Temecula, California.
Okay, welcome.
Hi. I have a question on the evaluation for upcoming prospects that I'm getting. Would you guys consider doing an average when you extrapolate the year to date for 2020? Will you do an average for these months that were shut down, or would you give a realistic of what it made January and February and do a comparison with 2019? I'm not sure if I'm being clear, but pretty much asking on the evaluation for an upcoming listing for the 2020 year. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not sure what your question is, Alex. I'm sorry.
On evaluating a business
Okay.
that has been shut down past 2 months, would you only show the evaluation for January and February, or would you do an average for these months and say, well, if the economy was not shut down, it would have potentially made this much?
I mean, I'm going to get tax returns from 17, 18, and 19, make my valuation based on those last 3 years. And as long as it's an essential business, we're probably going to go with that valuation, assuming that, come mid-year here, middle of June or July, that this business is going to be up and running back at close to full capacity.
Correct. So you're comparing if it's on the upswing or maybe even a weighted evaluation?
There's no data from 2020, minimal data from 2020, as I think Darren mentioned, mine from Pure Comps. So you kind of have to look backwards, and you got, like Dan said, you're going to tell the seller if they don't get back to their pre-COVID numbers, then all bets are off. It now becomes a buyer's valuation. Every buyer is going to ask for January, February, March, and April. They're asking for it already. And if they don't get their numbers back, then who knows what the value will be at that point. But that's what we're dealing with right now. 6 months from now, it's a different story.
Guess at the end of the day, it's, whatever a seller wants to sell it for and a buyer wants to buy it for. If you're going off previous years' financials, 17, 18, and 19, and they're currently closed, and a buyer comes along and thinks the business is going to come back, once everything opens up, you can take that approach. Me personally, I'm not taking any businesses on that are closed down. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. That's just not what I'm personally doing. Trent, do you have any advice on that part, on what you're doing in situations?
Honestly, that's a tough one. There's some, I can tell Alex has got some uncertainty, and honestly, probably everyone else on the panel does. No one's been through this, so we're all just kind of guessing and trying to make our way through it the best way. The only thing I would add, and Dan touched on it, certainly if it's an essential business, I'm looking at the weighted average over the last 3 years. If it's non-essential and it's closed down, the only thing I would add to it, like the catering business I had mentioned earlier, is I'm working with the seller to put together projected financials for this year, taking into consideration that, they were operational for the first half of the year. They've closed down. Things will come back. They're starting to pick up contracts. The anticipation is they will be back to normal, but this year is going to take a hit. And so we're going to factor that into the overall weighted average. Whether that's right or wrong, we are using, and we're putting a significant weight on this year's projections, and we're trying to be realistic in those projections and articulate and validate why those projections are what they are.
Right. All right. So we have a phone caller coming in. I don't have the name. Your number should be up on the screen. Are you there? Okay. I'm going to bring Felicia.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys for your time.
Hi, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, nice.
And it's sunny here. So I'm working with a competitive buyer, and I have a two-part question. One is, do you detail to the buyer what will happen with the 10% escrow money if they decide not to go through the deal? And then the second part is, do you provide the customer's name or assign a number to the customers during due diligence, since they are competitive buyers? So that was it.
Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, we never disclose a customer list. If anything, we white out the customer name or assign a number to that customer. I can't remember what the other part of the question was.
Do you detail to the buyer what's going to happen with their escrow money if they do not go through the deal?
Well, I mean, if they have a legitimate reason for not going through with the deal, if part of the due diligence results in finding something that they didn't like about the business or factual about the business that they were not aware of, then we're going to give them their money back.
But they also need to know that they're going to lose their money's at risk too, that if they're dropping out of the deal for something outside of a contingency in the contract that their
Right.
money is at risk.
Right.
And you shouldn't try to hide that at all. You should always be upfront about everything.
That's right in our asset purchase agreements. There's a liquidated damages clause, and we definitely go through that with them and make sure they are aware that their deposit money could be at risk. Absolutely.
Great.
And we do what you do, Dan, too. Customer 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, versus their actual names in general.
Great. Russ, where are you calling from, Russ?
Honolulu, Hawaii.
Oh, wow. You've got the best location yet. You should
How are you?
got a prize.
I have a question. These gentlemen obviously are well experienced. How do you blend, or do you blend, selling a franchise opportunity versus business brokerage? Sales, I should say.
You mean like a franchise versus a non-franchise?
Well, in my case, we're a very small market, but franchises are very popular here because many, many people simply forget about Hawaii. We're so small. We have 1.5 million population. That's not even as large as many counties you guys are in. But the question is, do you address the sale of a franchise opportunity within your brokerage? And if you do you consider that a reasonable thing to do when you also are well-schooled and well-trained in selling ongoing businesses?
Does anybody on this panel sell franchises that are not ongoing concerns already?
I think he's trying to ask about, can a business brokerage and a selling franchise opportunities within the same brokerage exist?
Yes, correct. That's what I'm asking.
So obviously, as business brokers, we're trying to bring on engagements because that's our golden ticket, right? But in franchising, the buyers are the gold. So it's kind of like opposite. So what I've seen in the past, some other firms in my marketplace have agents who are specialized just in selling franchise opportunities. That's all they do. And maybe the other agents can funnel the buyer leads to them and they just focus on that. It's very hard as a business broker also to be a franchise rep because you got to interview a lot of buyers to get to the one that's going to buy the franchise. And to be a good business broker, you got to dedicate a lot of time to your sellers. So it's kind of hard to do. But if you can get one person, a couple of people in your agency that specializes in franchise sales, then it can be done.
Great.
Jim, just sorry, not to comment on this, but I've got a difficult landlord that we're trying to get a lease assignment done with a buyer call in about 4 minutes. Do you mind if I drop off?
Well, actually, I think it's time for all of us to go. And I go ahead, Trent, get off now because I know you need to get ready. But I appreciate everybody, all of you guys getting on the call today and sharing your experience and knowledge. I really do. I think it went great. Really appreciate it. For everybody else, this is only part 1 of part 2. Next Thursday at 2:00, we're going to be doing another webinar and having 5 or 6 other business intermediaries from all over the country, some of the top brokers, talking about the COVID-19, what they're doing, and just about their practice in general. So make sure you're there next Thursday at 2:00. And until then, work hard, work smart, and keep making those buyers and sellers connections.